Hey there, Shopping Maniacs. You're listening to another episode of the Shop Talk Show. I'm Dave Rupert. With me is Chris Coyer. Hey, Chris, who do we have in the studio today?
Oh, right to it, Dave. I love your
hold on.
brevity.
Who are we including in the studio today?
Good. I like that.
Yeah, I'm going to import Jake
Still got it.
Archibald.html into this podcast. Yeah, Jake is on. Is awesome. I would love to have Jake on anytime, but we have him under the best possible circumstances, which is perhaps you'll all recall not so long ago in the past when I published a clickbaity kind of article, because I am genuinely curious about the answer to this. I've wondered about this pretty much my entire career, and I'll do the setup for it in this way. CSS is a language that can import itself. Use the import keyword, and then you can have two CSS files, and they smash together as far as the browser is concerned. Or maybe it treats them as separate files, but you link up one of them, and you get two of them. JavaScript can do the same thing, perhaps only somewhat recently with ESM, I guess, within the import keyword. JavaScript is a language that can import itself. Can HTML import itself? No, it cannot. It can import images, it can import other languages, but there is no such thing as what I'll call, and we'll probably call for the rest of this episode, an HTML include. They don't exist. It's not a thing that can happen. Is that true, Jake? It's true, right?
That is true. Yeah, no, it is not a feature that exists. I mean, yeah, okay, someone's going to be saying iframes are a thing, but so that is the
object tag could do that.
The object tag.
Yeah.
Okay, when people say the object tag can do it, there's no difference between the object tag and an iframe. In terms of this, in terms of document inclusion, it is.
I mean, just to be real specific about it, it does put that HTML on that page, but it really is it has a brick wall around it. It's not the same thing. The CSS cannot penetrate through that wall. Its intrinsic sizing doesn't grow with the content inside it and stuff. It's really just not a possible scenario here. So we should throw that one out right now. Nope, it's not iframes. It's not object. That's not what I mean.
There's an interesting thing around that, because this was on BlinkDev last week. The week before, Chrome is working on responsive iframes. So this is there was a proposal a while ago called seamless iframes, where you put the seamless attribute on the iframe, and then it kind of grows
up
for
some
the
CSS
content.
or something.
It doesn't. It wouldn't do any of the CSS, but it would. It wouldn't be a fixed size the way iframes are. It would be. It would just be as if you'd kind of inserted the content in. You wouldn't get the CSS passing through, but it would just keep going
anyway. Yeah,
basically height. That's didn't
funny.
Land.
Remember, one of my first startup jobs was at Wufoo, and it was a big deal for the business to iframe the form on another a third party iframe essentially, but there's some things that could go wrong. For it would set the height. It would do its best to set the height at first, but then if you clicked a button and it had a form validation problem or something, and we wanted to put a big red box on the screen, well, guess what? The height of the iframe has changed, and it was really early days for trying. How in the hell are we going to tell the parent page to please increase the height of this iframe now that the height is in it? It ended up being doable with post message and complicated crap like that. But yeah, it's a classic problem. The iframe does not do that.
So I'm interested to hear how you feel about this Chrome proposal then. So the way it works is you need the embedding page opts into this behavior. It's via an attribute, I think, or some CSS, whatever. And then the page that is being embedded needs to have a meta tag that says it's allowed to be embedded in this special growing way. Now, what you get then is, yes, the iframe will adapt, will sort of become the height of the content. But here's the thing. It only does it once. It does it at the load event.
So it doesn't
of
solve
the inner document.
Wufoo problem, we'll call it. It just doesn't. That doesn't work.
That's what I think. And this was my feedback to them on the Blink Dev list. Is this doesn't solve any of the problems we have.
Or like
and in the
load
explainer,
more
it's like,
comments, or like Discus style load more comments. It doesn't do that, right?
Discuss is one of the use cases they say in the explainer that they're solving, and it's like, you're not though.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And they say that, we might have an API, a JavaScript API, to sort of update the height. So the inner iframe content can say, I've changed height, can you fix that, please? But it's just yeah, how is that different to the post message thing? Yeah,
yeah, we do that. Like, yeah.
The benefit of this system would be if it does it itself. Right? Yeah. Otherwise, I don't care. This just
here's
seems
this is a wild card for you, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, even though I think this it seems like I'm about to say something wrong. I think iOS already does this, and you actually can't opt out of it. Iframes only behave this way, and it's been annoying for CodePen and our various iframing. But yeah,
I can't. I was going to look this up, but yes, I've encountered that, and I don't know if they ever fixed that. So one of the architectural issues with it is, if you're sort of having an iframe that's just expanding all the time, the reason that the seamless attribute was dropped is because due to the Meltdown Inspector CPU bugs, it suddenly became like, okay, if this content is cross-origin, we need this stuff to live in a different process. And so all of a sudden, kind of having that expanding content thing became like a lot more effort than it was before. There's ways of doing it, just like message passing like you would with post message. Yeah. But previously it was able to sort of do it all within the same thread. And now it can't be main thread, it can't be same thread, and it can't be same process. So that suddenly becomes like a jump in complexity.
Blah. Okay. Well, I would be happy to chime in on that thread. So maybe I'll find it, and because it really does seem like a half-assed. I mean, no offense to anybody that worked on it or whatever, but like solve it all the way.
Yeah.
I think you're in there.
Yeah, if you're going to do this, it needs to be better than what we can do ourselves, right? Like and I think that's it, because you've got to do this meta tag thing, you've got to do this other thing, so you've already got the complexity there. So it's like, well, if I've got to do that, I may as well just do the post message thing myself. Because then I can do it sooner than the load event, and I can do it more often. So,
and if I own if I own both pieces of content, like I could also just slurp that content into the first party page, it's weird, because it's like when I don't own the content is when I care about the iframe working good. So
whoever's working on this, feel free to shoot me an email for my own little list of grievances with iframes that you could solve for me. I have a couple in my head, but I don't want to derail this, because we're talking about HTML includes, which is iframes are fine. They're good. In fact, every dang business I've ever been a part of, if they didn't exist, I wouldn't have a business, pretty much. So, like, iframes, pretty good. Let's stick those around. I still
remember my first iframe.
Different situation.
It was a magical, like, I'm putting a teleport inside a website, and it was magic. It was just magical. And
it's incredible. They power lots of stuff. But so another way to frame this then is, I started out saying CSS can import itself, JavaScript can import itself, HTML cannot import itself. Why would you want to it? Well, the situation I always set up is this classic, like, it's week 2 of your front-end web development class, and you're making a 3-page website with a contact page, about page, and home page. And all 3 of them have the same header and footer. What do you do on those 3 pages? It's unclear. The answer is you either repeat yourself or you reach for tooling. And both of those are kind of like, they're not the end of the world. It's not like a disaster that you would have to do either of those 2 things, but it's just funny. Like the web platform has always been, we use that term, pave the cow paths. What are developers doing? Can we solve it for them in a better way than what they're doing now? Like, can we prevent them from having to reach for a tool? Can we step in here and do something about that? It seems like, almost feels like low-hanging fruit a little bit. Like, could we do this? Why? Am I just wrong? Is it not really a need? Or what? I guess I'll pass it to you, Jake, then, to be like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, people absolutely want this, right? We've seen like, your article, lots of people on GitHub and on other social media saying, like, yes, this is a feature we want. So there's absolutely a desire for it. So I thought what we could do is like talk about because I don't think everyone agrees on how this feature should behave. So I thought, like, the three of us could figure it out, and then we can kind of have a look at what the problems are, what's kind of where are the kind of complexities that people might not have thought of. So I guess one way that this could work is that you've got this like an include tag or something like that.
A tag. So that's okay. It probably would be. It's HTML. So what else would it be? It's a tag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a tag of sorts, and then it tells the browser where to go and get the content from. So at that point, it can stop parsing completely, and it starts fetching the URL.
Is there precedent for that? Isn't that how the link tag works, or am I wrong about that?
There is precedent for this. It in a roundabout way, it is how script tags work. So if you have a script tag that isn't a module script, it's not got a defer, it's not got an async. When it hits that script tag, it stops parsing the document and fetches the other thing and waits for that script to execute. And the reason that happens is because that inner script can call document.write and inject stuff into the parser.
It might do?
Yeah. That's it. It's all because of this document.write, which injects into the parser, which is what we're talking about doing here, right? We're talking about doing that same thing, just without script.
Right. And so immediately, at least a yellow flag that says, like, hey, introducing, what would we call that? Render blocking tags?
It's parser blocking.
Parser blocking. Yeah, okay.
So browsers
that's
have
pretty
this...
low level. That's even worse than render blocking because it's earlier.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you've got something that render blocks, like CSS does, then in the background it can still the browser can still be parsing the page. It can start loading other things that it finds. Now browsers have a workaround for this. In that they all have these kind of like token parsers, pre-parsers, whatever you want to call it, where although it's not parsing the document and putting the elements on the page, it will discover, this looks kind of like an image tag, this kind of looks like a link tag, this kind of looks like a script tag. Okay. I'll start fetching those because I'm probably going to need them when we resume. And that might not always be true because that document.write could
obliterate it. Yeah.
It could start an HTML comment.
Yeah.
And then all those things are gone. It could open a template tag, which means those things shouldn't load yet. But browsers have had to, unfortunately had to solve
imagine
this,
a theoretical future where document.write doesn't exist. How happy
That's
would that
where
be?
I'm going. Why don't let's kill the Batman? Let's if he's the problem, let's get rid of it.
That's maybe a tangent, but isn't it theoretical that this is parser blocking at all? We just implied that as a constraint, right? We said this could be parser blocking. Could you make the choice that it's not parser blocking?
So if it wasn't parser blocking by default, then I think we'd be creating a feature that is just going to be layout shifts everywhere for all of the web, right? Because you're going to have
so it would start to render, and then it would get the HTML, then it would inject the HTML. It's a little bit like fetching and injecting content like an ad, and then gross, and not only gross, but like I think we've learned over the past 3 years, thanks to what do they call them, core vitals or whatever, that layout shifting is actually kind of a penalty. For your metrics.
I mean, every user knew it. We just didn't really have a good name for it. Like that thing of where you start reading a thing and it moves around, or you try to click a thing and it moves around. Like no one likes that. But it's good that core web vitals are.
That would never get through then, right? There's no way a proposal for include would get through where it was not parser blocking, and thus it wouldn't even sometimes happen. It would just always happen with includes.
Yeah,
right?
Unless you are, creating a fixed size container with like scrolling and all that. But that's not.
I see. Basically, your CSS choices might prevent it. Yeah.
But if I can imagine a solution where you put the async attribute on it, and you get this version of it. There's an opt-in. It's like if you really know what you're doing. In this, in the same way we have a script. So So I think we need parser blocking to some extent. But one thing we could do, and I don't know how many of the performance problems this solves, but you could require that the thing you're including is a complete tree.
Okay.
By which I mean, like, if you parsed it separately, that would be your result. So, if you open a div in your include, it would be automatically closed once the include has finished processing. So I guess my question to you folks is, does that remove a lot of use cases for you? Like, I remember when I've done like PHP includes in the past, I've definitely had such a hacky way of doing it. Like one include, which is like open container, open wrapper, open thing, and then another include, which is div, like slash div,
right.
Closing
I would
everything.
do that in WordPress themes because there was a header.php and a footer.php, and rather than the rest of the 10 templates having those 3 complete divs in it, including opening and closing tags, you could just do it once in the header and footer, and then you'd get those on all your pages. I feel like I was always conflicted about that as a concept because for the one thing, it kind of screws up your, like, prettier gets confused and stuff. Like it hurts other tools in your tool belt when you do that. I don't know. I feel like that would have implications like deeper. Like, how do you what if we say, okay, it's got to be a complete tree, but you don't make it a complete tree? Then what happens? Like the browser technology kicks in and like closes all those divs for you or whatever.
Same as what happens when you like put something in inner HTML that doesn't have a closing tag. So what
auto negotiates or whatever.
Yeah, it treats it as if it's a kind of complete document fragment kind of thing. So it would do all of its, like, it kind of as if the document ended. It's like, okay, what am I going to do to close this out? What do I need to shift around to make this work? And that's the tree you end up with. So I think the logic would just be the same as that. And if you want all the wrapping stuff, we could add a feature which is like where you have all your opening and closing divs, but then you have like a little tag in the middle of like outlet, which is like, this is where I want the rest of the document to go, or something like that. A slot. Yeah, of course. Sorry, I've been using Remix recently, and they call it outlet. Should be thinking in terms of the web platform. Yeah, like a slot.
Come back to the web platform.
Funny. I mean, maybe we could make a JavaScript analogy. You can't do an import for some JavaScript where you have an if statement with an opening curly brace and then another include with a closing curly. Like, that's not happening in JavaScript. So maybe I'd be okay with that restriction.
That's a really good comparison, and the same is true for CSS.
Right.
And I think the same is true with... So the other system of JavaScript importing is import scripts, which you get in a worker. But yes, the case is the same there. Yeah.
I think that's how I'd expect it. Like, if I didn't close a p tag, not everything's stuffed into the p tag after that. If I didn't, close an li, it figures it out. I mean, there are times where you mess up HTML really good, and it's like you didn't close the UL, and so it just tries to chuck the rest of the page in the UL. But I mean, that's sort of like, I would just expect it to do that. I don't, I guess
it doesn't close off the use case of like nesting it in there. Like, you could still have nav with a closing nav, but in between it, you have an include. It would still be the complete, tree of the navigation. You can still like nest it in there, right? It's not, there's no restriction that the include has to be top level or something, right?
Exactly.
I think about too, like, this is maybe like work specific or something, but like something like AI chatbot or something, you're like, hey, what's the Constitution, and it'll like go and it'll find a constitution.html somewhere, and it'll just start streaming that response in, like,
oh gosh,
almost like an HTML
is that going to affect this?
Yeah, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but like, that's going to give you a half a tag at some point, just by the chunks, right, that are coming back. So, I think though my expectation would be it would just kind of work as HTML. I'm trying to import HTML. If it's bad HTML, it's bad HTML. I don't know. I know you have to think about it, but I always I get like when we think about, oh, what if somebody's going to use this bad? It's like, yeah, dude, people are going to use this bad. This is like,
oh, we've
people
talked about
are
that. It's
horrible.
like my least favorite reason to nix a feature is people do bad. I mean, if it's security, that's one thing.
Security is obvious. Yeah. But
I often something I've said in the past about this is like, you can commit a hate crime just using text. So, like, what are we trying to protect people from here? And I think the right way to think about it is, you don't want to create a system that helps people do the wrong thing unintentionally. And I think that's the bar. So if you, I got a little annoyed at a CSS feature that was, it was view transition name auto, and I didn't, and I found that there was a lot of complex behavior hidden behind that auto, and a lot of things that could bite the developer that they wouldn't realize is there until it was breaking in production. And so I think that's the class of problem we want to avoid. So yes, if we release this feature but it's got these like hidden gotchas, then I think that's problematic.
Right.
If people want to knowingly do the wrong thing, then
like the not parser blocking by default would be one of those, but
exactly
maybe not the only one.
Because that might, on a local machine, load so fast that they don't see the layout shifts, and then
and that's like the layout shift sucks. We know that, and then so let's say we make it parser blocking by default. That also has a negative implication of a little performance hit. So with all the people that chimed in that says, just let tooling do this, just let your 11D thing smash the two pieces of HTML together before it ever goes out. Yeah, that's great. Like you probably can't beat that at a web platform level, right? Like,
But your argument that you made before stands,
is...
like JavaScript has imports, and that was introduced relatively recently, and that creates this potential for waterfalls. Like, it requests a thing to then discover it needs to request another thing. That means it needs to request another
times
thing.
10,000. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So we added to this problem in JavaScript land, and the advice is like, you can get around it using a bundler.
And
so
it's
we could just say the same for HTML.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Very few people are anti ESM. Okay. Yeah. So we're just moving the same. I don't want to call it a problem, but situation over to HTML. Yeah, fair enough. I like that. What about, can we go into the niche of can one of those imports import another thing? Is that a foregone conclusion that we allow that?
It feels like it should, but I mean, it would be easy in the spec or something to say you couldn't, but it seems fine, right? Like
I bring it up only because people are like, well, what if it imports itself? Gotcha.
Iframes, you can do this. Like, this is already a problem, right? Like,
right. Cyclical or whatever.
Yeah, and I think iframes just has some sort of limit applied to it. But whereas with this new thing, we could just say cyclical is not allowed, right?
If accordion.html imports accordion.html, continue. Like, it's not
continue semicolon.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like that.
And if people want to give it a different query string to work around that, then fine. Again, like they're deliberately doing that. That's okay.
So far we're really scoping out this feature. We're going to make it parser blocking by default. We're going to allow it to import multiple things, and we're going to require complete trees. So we've scoped out the feature a little bit. Is there more to scope out?
I don't think there is. The stuff around security and stuff around like adoption issues. I think this feature as we've described it is
it can't be third party, right?
Correct.
It would be relative URLs only.
Well, you could say it's third party as long as cause. You would absolutely have to pass a cause check, and a content type check and that kind of thing. But okay, put it this way: you can already fetch some content as text from another website and then inner HTML it into your page, right? But that has to go through cause. So we're not changing that.
It's just
in terms of security.
Okay. Yep. Wow,
security.
Wow, we're making a lot of progress here.
This is it. Let's
almost out.
This.
This is good. What
Is there
could go
other
wrong?
security problems? Is that on your
Yes.
list here? Okay.
It is. It is. So I think there will be systems out there. There are definitely systems out there that, like, old forums and stuff, which let people put HTML in their posts, but they go, well, you're not allowed to do script because that would be,
Right.
that would allow you to hack the site. So no
Sure.
script, but you can kind of do,
The
none of this, none of this
section
other
of a
thing.
WordPress site would be an example. Like they have a white list of tags. Strong is allowed, script is not. But you're saying this white list or this black list is of one tag.
Yes. So if it's an allow list, it's kind of fine. We're okay, but there will be things out there which operate on a block list, which
Black
means
list.
like we've got a new we're adding a new include tag, and that include tag
Right.
can suddenly execute script because it can point at a thing which
Like
has
I
a script
feel
tag
like
in.
like your GitHub profiles existed before the details element went out, and then all of a sudden we got details, and the people are like, check it out, my GitHub profile can have details on it now. Not because GitHub allowed it, it's because HTML allowed it.
I hope they deliberately allowed it, but I don't know for sure. I mean, who knows? Who knows? I got a bug bounty once for like some unescaped HTML in GitHub.
Oh, nice.
I don't find security issues very often. That was one I did.
Ooh.
Okay, so a security issue is there's blacklists on who knows how much software in the world, and now all of a sudden they support this new include tag. What could go wrong? What's the problem?
Well, it's just another way to execute script because it's you're pointing at something else like
content.
Yeah, and script. It's going to run on the same origin. There's your problem. I think one way you could get around this is if
that
the
bad? Tell me.
Instead of an include tag, have a script tag with type document include.
Oh, that's weird though.
But I love it. But it plays on the idea that if these systems allow the script tag already, they're already in trouble. Now there might be cases where it gets confused about that type attribute.
Yeah.
But,
well, I'll throw one at you because it came up even in a Jake does a show as well called Off the Main Thread. Everybody go subscribe to that as well. Who knows how long ago, 6 months ago, you were talking about some of these form styling things, which I think there's been some movement on. We had Jen on last week from Apple, Jen Simmons, and she was talking about how Apple wants to. They want to go big on that, like now that Select is done, and I think you were talking about it. Like so much crap had to happen just for that one that now we're more ready to do like all the rest of them. And
Absolutely.
Here's why. One of the reasons why is because we've agreed on an opt-in. That there's now a way that you can say, I want this new behavior for form elements, and I'm asking for it, so I'm not risking old stuff on the web because I have to go into it eyes wide open. Is there an eyes wide open version of this? Could it be like, yes, there's an include tag in HTML now, but it doesn't work unless you put this meta tag in the header, and then
so you could have a meta tag, a CSS opt-in. Yeah, exactly. That would be another way around the same problem. I mean, we are stacking up these opt-ins at an alarming rate. We've got loads in CSS now for discrete animations for this styling thing.
It's surprising to me almost. It's like we could fix that whole list of CSS mistakes. Just have an opt-in at the top that's like, I'm opting into CSS5 or whatever.
Doc type. Let's have a new doc type and solve the whole.
Yeah, and we could use an emoji for it. Like that would be the one good thing that came out of the lightning bolt thing that we've all put to rest, right? I can't even remember what it's called, which is a good thing.
Meta box model
I know what it's
2005.
called
because you went to war against it.
AMP is
yes.
AMP was a big part of my life when I didn't want it to be as a dev role at Google because it was outside of my control. Yet
came down from on high. Fair enough.
Came down from on high. Yeah. Okay. I stayed away from it mostly. All right. What else? What else we need to solve with this thing?
Well, it's I thought you were almost going to talk me out of it. Well, before this, not me out of it, but I thought that this would be harder somehow. That there's, it feels like if anything, we're erring on this kind of being a decent idea that we should do. What are all the other people saying that's like that are naysayers against this or whatever? Can we speak for the people that hate it that aren't here?
Absolutely. There's an adoption issue in that it's one of those features that is going to be a bad experience for older browsers until it's everywhere. Now, and that's not unusual. Like CSS Grid, right? It's the same. It's not.
But
it's
we're
not
talking
really
about
something.
content here, you know. That's a different ball game.
Yes,
but document query selector all include like run includes like fetch Ajax. Like I'm not like it's polyfillable, right? Like it seems
you can make a web component for it.
Yeah, people are making web components already. Like it's a polyfillable feature, right? So,
under a different tag name for sure. To make it a web component, but I think so. Hard to get the parser blocking thing, but sure, right? This stuff is doable. I think a bigger problem here is going to be other crawlers, like search engines and LLMs. Like LLM crawlers are dumb. They don't run a page with JavaScript. So if you're a client rendered page, the LLMs aren't seeing it right now. But so it was a guy, Sam Rose on Blue Sky, was saying he wants this feature because it would allow him to remove a load of the repetition in his like head tag. So like all of that kind of meta stuff. Just
social media includes.
Social media includes. They're never gonna process this. Yeah. Right. Like, or if this arrives in all browsers,
interesting.
Twitter or X or Facebook, they're not gonna crawl those includes for the meta social image and all that kind of thing.
If not found some value in it.
That would make it maybe a unique tag in that it could be used in the head and in the body. Like that's maybe kind of a unique. If we were making this in HTML,
the link element can be.
Yeah, I guess so.
Here, there.
Yeah. So it's kind of that level. Script, link. It's like that level of a primitive.
Yeah, scripts, of course. Style.
So,
yeah. There's a few. Yeah.
So rollout is going to be rough. Like nobody's going to use it until it's very well supported, probably, because it would be rough. Except for that, it's kind of like polyfillable. So. Maybe.
Yeah, but it's not polyfillable in a way that these social media services and LLM scrapers and all of that sort of stuff are going to understand. I mean, maybe people would see the lack of LLM scraping as a benefit.
I see, because it's polyfillable through JavaScript, which they don't run.
Is there like a DDoS potential, like include super large video.html, and that has a video that's whatever the entire criterion collection, .mov or whatever, and now it's like that browser is just locked while it downloads the entire criterion collection. Is that something like a risk, or is that kind of the parser blocking, or I don't know? I'm just, how would that impact?
I think we would have to say that these includes would, at the very least, have the text HTML or similar content type,
right?
Or maybe even a new content type if there was a security benefit for that.
What if I blobbed it? What if I put a blob?
Text/blob? No.
I mean, it's any of this stuff. It's like, well, you can call fetch with JavaScript and fetch whatever you want
and block.
So again, I don't think you're doing anything you can't already do.
Jake, are we calling it the fetch element? I'm sorry if it's called the fetch element. I'm still
maybe it's much smaller than include, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a little tidier, a little.
Fetch is not bad. That's funny.
Good.
Oh,
but it'd be multi-purpose, right? Like if it happened to get an image, then it turns into an image. If it happens to get something else, JSON, then it blows up. Interesting.
Right.
Okay, but are we avoiding the streaming thing? Because I feel like that's worth going there. Okay,
so there's two arguments to this. Is like, is this feature that we're describing now better than the status quo or not? And I think the reason it keeps getting blocked in standards line is because they see it as a real drag on the status quo, like a real step down from the status quo. So the status quo being do it on the server.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
And they're not wrong, right? This is. I am actually quite sad that a lot of the serverless hosts don't have some kind of basic include system, because would we be even talking about this if GitHub Pages and Netlify and all of this supported like the old Apache style SSIs? Would this just be a non-topic? I don't know.
Yeah, if all servers had like Apache
I don't think
server
so,
side.
because I've like counted them in the past. There are so many different technologies that solve this issue. It's absolutely unbelievable to me. Right down to the fact that your old web servers could do it is just weird to me. Like, that's one of the weirder solutions to it. Like, let Apache do it? Oh my gosh.
There's also like this. I don't like the answer of like, well, it works on. I just use Bun powered by Zig to stitch up my page, and it's great. Like, I don't like that, because again, it's like the education angle. Like, we should be able to use HTML to write HTML. We shouldn't have to like jump to another language. Oh, cool! You like getting your feet wet in HTML? Psych! You have to learn PHP. Has all these security issues. It sucks. Like, or it's fine. Don't stop. I heard 1,000 Lambos coming at me, but it's PHP is fine. But like when we're immediately pushing learners off to this whole other complex system the second they want to automate copy pasting, right?
Yeah, I think so. But this is why folks haven't wanted to add it, is because it's slower than what we have now. Unless you flip the question to saying what we have now is people calling fetch, getting a lot of text, and then putting it in inner HTML. And I had this example I used to use in performance talks where I was on GitHub and I clicked the link to an issue, and while that was happening, I would open another browser window, copy the URL, and paste it into the new window. And I would get content in that new window. Even though I started it later, I would get content in that new window quicker. And it was because of streaming, right? Like the way GitHub worked at the time, still kind of works, is you click the link, it goes and fetches all the content, and then once it's got all the content, it displays it. And this was a crazy long thread. And I was on airport Wi-Fi at the time, so everything was really slow. And it was faster for me to trigger a full page reload, and that content was like, all it needed to do was just, as it was downloading the HTML, it was able to render
You were
it.
probably hitting the Ruby endpoint with that streams in HTML response versus hit a JavaScript and then get all the JavaScript that page needs to load, then paint the page, right? Assemble and paint.
Exactly that. So I think one of the things that we could do that I think standards people will be very happy with or not object to is, can that part of the problem be solved first? Like, can we create a slightly higher level than it is right now way of you call fetch, you get your response, and then you say, I want to stream this into this element. Start parsing this response as HTML and start putting it in this element. And I think that's also an opportunity to, like, inner HTML does a bunch of stuff differently. Like, it doesn't execute scripts that point to other URLs, that kind of thing. And I think this would also be a point of like, let's remove that weirdness. Let's make it behave as close as possible to just normally parsed markup.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I think that's an easier sell. I know it's not the tag people want, but it would make creating the web component version of this so much easier, because you're not having to do all of that manually.
So instead of a fetch element, we have a bucket element to just, this is the bucket I want you to pour all this HTML into.
Well, I would hope it would just be like you could do it with a div. Like there would just be a way of saying like
div bucket.
Yeah, like but it would be like response.body pipe to div dot the DOM receiver, something. I don't know. Like
No, bucket. We're calling
buckets.
it.
I like that. Yeah.
So
I've already got storage.
So it's
bucket.
declarative. Is that what we're saying? Because I did hear from a little birdie at Google that they are working on what they call declarative streaming content.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't.
And I think when I hear the word declarative, it just means HTML in this context.
The solution I was talking about there was imperative rather than declarative.
Yeah.
So
Because you're saying fetch, then
Right.
inject.
Doing
right?
it on the JavaScript side and pointing it at something and saying that container bucket is happy to receive streamed content, which is just not a thing right now, right?
I'd be interested to know what that thing you've heard about is. I wonder if it just became this responsive iframe thing, or if it's.
I'll quote the email, but not the person, just in case.
We're
Looking at a way to declaratively stream content into the page this year. Can't confirm it will ship, but we have an approach for it and are testing it out. It would be async and fast, but there would be frequent repaints within the stream's parent's draw region, so it's not without its own performance gotchas.
So I'm getting a
which is
green
like
box
that's
on my bucket.
what streaming does, so got it. Yeah.
That's interesting, because so that doesn't sound like the iframe thing, because the responsive iframe is only doing it once rather than this repainting thing, unless they've kind of like walked back from the email they sent you. So that's interesting. I would like so it could be that they are working on this thing that we're discussing now.
Yeah, could be.
But it seems weird. I mean, if they're saying it's async, then
They are.
you've got the layout shift issue. Right, that's. I would say that kind of falls back into the non-starter thing, and with this streaming solution, that lower level one I'm mentioning, where you get the content and you pipe it into another element, you're going to have the layout shifting issues there. But I think because you're having to do this a bit manually with JavaScript, there's more of a suggestion of exactly what you're doing here, like you kind of know that this is going to execute sometime later.
It's like partial assembly, like kind of tick. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I wouldn't doubt this comes down from on high. You know how that works, Jake. Like now they have Gemini and all that, and the default UI experience from these chatbots is dot.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some high
Angular,
up is like
powered
the
by Wiz.
web platform should support dot.
It is interesting, actually, that part of AI, because it is a slower stream, even when you're on a fast connection, has really kind of a lot of people have woken up to the possibility of streams all of a sudden, even though we've had it since like 2016.
And it's only because like in computer terms, it takes impossibly long for an AI to like generate a response. Like it's taking minutes to generate this response, and we're finally like, what would make that appear faster?
It's relatively new to me, because isn't there it's not just one technology that needs to support it, or at least a full-on implementation of it. Like if you have a client-side rendered JavaScript app, and one of the things that it does is it queries Dave's book library, but that query is maybe a little slow because Dave's on some cheap Bluehost thing or whatever, and it takes 1.5 seconds to even do the query, that you could set up a streaming situation that won't wait until it has all 15 books. It'll get one book and render it. It'll get the second book and render it. But like, isn't there like multiple bits of technology that need to all support that? Like your JavaScript framework needs to be HTML streaming friendly, and the server itself needs to like hold the connection open while it's delivering these books slowly as it's getting them. I just don't like get it all the way. It's confusing for my brain.
The idea of streaming content in general is ancient, right? Like browsers have been able to render content as they receive it for like before I was working on the web. But being able to from JavaScript get that streaming data is newer. There were ways of doing it with XML HTTP requests. Kinda, it wasn't great, but yeah, we got it with fetch. Not straight away with fetch; it came slightly afterwards. But yes, at that point you were able to sort of like receive chunks of the data.
Right. So
as
the
it came
fetch
down.
is, for lack of a better way of explaining it, just like sits open, just wait.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't got the last like bit or whatever over the wire that says I'm done now. It just sits open and receives stuff.
Exactly.
And then it's able to do callbacks while it's getting stuff. Is that right?
So in an HTTP 2 world, you only have one connection. HTTP 2 onwards, you only have one connection ideally to the server anyway. One connection like per server you're talking to, and there are multiple requests responses going on through that. So yes, like keeping a response open is not a problem. It just has, like you say, hasn't received the "I'm done" message. So that's not a problem at all. And you could do it in HTTP 1 as well, but you would have multiple connections open, that was the kind of one of the big innovations that we got with like Speedy, which became HTTP 2. So yeah, the other part of it is like, you can, while sending a request, you can start receiving the response at the same time. So it can stream both ways. And this is called a duplex stream. Now, no browser supports this, but Node.js Deno, they do. So that's a way off topic facts, but they are nonetheless facts.
All right. Well,
I hope you enjoyed them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
yeah.
So would
I have a question.
I've taken us way off track. Sorry.
I know what I want to ask, but I want to go after Dave.
Okay. On December 14th, 2014, Mozilla killed HTML imports.
No,
I'm not
do
bitter.
that. Let's be clear to people that was never this. That was a different
That was
thing.
totally separate initiative. And they said, we're going to see how ESM lands and rethink the situation.
Yes.
I was checking my watch 10 years ago or 11 years ago. Haven't said anything much past that. How different is this solution from that solution? Do you feel like?
So we could have, because you can import JSON now in
with
browsers.
type assertions.
With type assertions. And I'm kind of okay about that. Like it's not changing my life. Like, because
it saves like 3 lines of code, but cool.
Exactly. And if you're importing JSON from somewhere else, you want to deal with failure, so you don't want to use a static import anyway, because that one external JSON fails brings down your entire app. No, thank you. So you would be using a dynamic import, but that has a sort of side effect of like, once it's imported forever. It becomes part of the module graph. If something else tries to import it again, it just gets the response back that it already has, which often isn't what you want to do with an external API. So yeah, when it comes to importing JSON, I'm like,
data. I hadn't thought of that. That's a bummer.
Yeah, change the query string, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, I'm glad we've got it, because it's nice, because it's something you can do in bundler tools, and it's nice to kind of have a web standard way of doing it, but it's not changing my life.
That's funny. We use Apollo at work to do GraphQL requests, and there's like a way in a GraphQL request that you can do a signify, like, because if you run the same query again later in the app, it uses the cache that it already has, which is a benefit. That's kind of one of the biggest reasons to even use a tool like that. But you can, in a query, say network only. So when it hits that one, it won't use the cache. It will go to the network. I wonder if we need type assertions with network assertions.
Redo it. I think then it's kind of just so different to the how the module graph system works. So, but as you say, it's so easy to just do that in userland. Like because you can store the date that you received the last thing, and you can use that to decide if you go to the cache or not. And blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like it's yeah. But we could have an import that imports a document. But in the same way, it's kind of like, I don't know how this is different to like XML HTTP request, getting a document. I don't think it solves any problems that we have. Like you can fetch text and then put it into a XML parser. There's APIs for that, or HTML parser, and you can get a document out the other side. And there are ways of doing that in a streaming way. They're kind of hacky, but there are ways of doing it. So yeah, I think ESM imports don't give us something to solve this problem.
I'll say the like CSS assertion type, which can like then be like an adopted style sheet. That's kind of cool. That's kind of not fully here yet, if I'm remembering correctly. There's also talk of like HTML modules where like I could write a template and import that into my React component and make that better, or my web component or whatever. That's also attractive to me, but again, I don't know the motion on those. But like, and doing it in JavaScript is fine, but it gets us sort of away from this declarative idea of like using HTML to write HTML, right? Like, that's not what I want. So I guess how, so this kind of proposal we've outlined, like, is it different than HTML imports? Like, we just didn't use a template tag, and so they're super different, or what's different,
So HTML imports were never, they never rendered. They were definition files, essentially. So they contained it was almost like a sort of package that contained a template, some CSS, and some JavaScript to define that web component.
You didn't have to call dot define element. It was like implied that you did that. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, it's sort of a different thing. It didn't stream. I think we did the right thing by unshipping that in terms of Chrome, but in terms of Firefox and Safari, like not shipping that. I know a lot of people got upset that a lot of APIs changed, some for the better, some for the worse, but I don't know. It was a slightly ugly part of the standards process that other browsers came to that so late and then wanted changes, but I think things ended up in a better shape in the end. And I still think
what about now though? What if it came back? You don't think anything's fundamentally changed? It's still a bad idea?
I think if you wanted a way to package up a web component, I think we could have something like that. It's not something I've thought too much about. Like, I guess what, being put on the spot, I'm kind of thinking, is there a lower level, like, package primitive that we would benefit from? And that's something people have looked at over and again. Like, could I have the benefit of having different files, but wrap them all into sort of one thing? Like, because if you're downloading the like some JavaScript and some CSS that are codependent, it's kind of silly that they're two separate files, because it could just be one, and you get a little bit of a performance bump from it. I think there's still if you're really chasing like the fastest performance, one of the big gaps that we've got is that you can't inline JavaScript modules. If as soon as you have an import, that has to be going to a different file. There's no way of sort of like packaging that all
We're
together.
just running into this issue where you can only have one import map. I know that's a little different, but I think it is probably related in a way that it doesn't want to like look too many places for that information or something. I don't know what the deal is, but I thought that was such a weird limitation.
So Yoav Weiss has been looking at that, and he's written a blog post about it, which I haven't fully read yet, but I think he's been working on solutions to that problem, because I know we've had those problems at Shopify. So yeah, it was a kind of like initial shipping restriction, but yes, I think there's
the
appetite to fix
vibes
it.
of the import is that, like, let's say my web component is just like a card. It's a really nicely designed card element, and I call it my dash card. And all it does is shadow DOM up a really nice, looking card thing. There's no JavaScript at all. It's not necessary. That's not what this web component does. Isn't that feel stupid that I have to like script that up for it to work at all? That it would be nice if my cool little card component, which its only job is to make a isolated thing look nice, involves JavaScript at all. It would just be nice to not even involve it.
I think so. Although, as soon as you start getting into, like, so we've got declarative shadow DOM now. Like, you can create a shadow DOM without JavaScript. But right now you need to put that shadow DOM inside every instance of the component.
Yeah, it's a little repetitive, but hey, that's that's okay to me because it makes sense somehow. Yeah, I don't know.
But I think the bit where it starts to like make sense is that the shadow DOM that you would have can be different per component instance, and often is. Like if you make a grid component, then depending on the attributes on that element will affect what shadow DOM is rendered in order to represent that number of columns, that number of rows. So I think being able to make web components that don't require JavaScript.
We already got it with the shadow DOM thing.
Well,
yeah, kind of.
Well, or more that it's like you could literally do it for the simplest of cases, but as soon as you hit that case where you need a different shadow DOM structure depending on the you then like we need an if statement, we need an if tag, we need a like you start creating conditional logic in HTML, which maybe we'll have one day, but like that's the reason we don't just have that yet. But I do think there is I think of components as two separate types of thing. There is like an interactive component, and then there's another thing which I refer to as HTML macro, which it's just like input in and it will generate some HTML as a result, which I think, Chris, is like the thing you're more referring to. And the nice thing in terms of server rendering, the frameworks do both pretty well, whereas web components don't do the HTML macro thing so well. You're still having to involve script to do this thing that feels like it shouldn't have to have script.
It's just to go off topic even just a smidge more for a second, is that another interesting, like one of the reasons you might use shadow DOM is because you like the scopedness of the CSS involved in there, which is fair. It's pretty cool. That's some hardcore scoping you got there. But we've shipped now at scope in CSS.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Oh, that's some nice scoping you got there.
This was very fascinating to me that you can put a angle bracket script, or I'm sorry, style tag just in the DOM arbitrarily, just put it wherever. And then if you do that, the at scope thing in CSS, that scope, you don't have to put any parentheses or after it, whereas normally where you'd explain what scope it is, the scope just becomes whatever the parent element is.
Oh, do you know what? I didn't know that. That's neat.
It is neat. Because that is as close as the web platform has ever gotten to selector scoping, because otherwise scope doesn't help with that. So now you have the style block that's just the styles, as long as you put it in an at scope thing, apply to only just that parent. It will not leak outside of it. But I was like, well, that it has the same vibes as that declarative shadow DOM stuff to me. So like, well, then you used 100 cards on the component. Each one of those 100 cards has its own style block, if that's how you want to roll. But it is kind of like almost like tooling-free scoping, which I've never seen before. So I'm kind of into it, but how painful is it to have 100 identical style blocks versus one CSS thing? Like, how bad is that? I don't know how to test it, but
it's not great. Or the CSS constructible style sheets are made to avoid that issue. So there is and it is actually one of the big problems of declarative shadow DOM, is it's difficult. You could put a link tag that points to, that has an href, but then that's forcing you to have a separate. Yeah, exactly. There is a Microsoft proposal, and I can dig out the link, we could put it in like show notes or whatever, that they are looking at a way of inside your declarative shadow DOM to say, use this other script tag that's already on the page. Or
that rules.
This URL. Yeah, so it'll avoid that duplication at both a text and parsing level, which is really, really nice.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. All right. Well, I hope people listen to this. We could probably put it in the GitHub thread that's kind of actively talking about this, because there is one. There's probably not only one. Who knows how divergent it is? But it seems like we've basically solved all your issues. So you're welcome. And let's go. But did we solve the streaming one? Like, would you say, I want this to be parser blocking, and I want it, and I'm okay with, which means it won't. We were saying parser blocking could be an opt-in. You've got to have streaming.
No, I think parser blocking would have to be the default, else you get the layout shifting. But parser blocking, or The alternative to parser blocking is doing some kind of clever render blocking where it won't render. It can continue to parse, but it doesn't render the new elements. But that would be a new concept. But yes, it would need to visually halt. It can do work in the background, but it needs to visually halt. But yes, I think as soon as it starts receiving content from the include URL, it should stream, and that's
stream.
That should be the
so that's
selling
not an
point.
opt-in or anything. That's just how it should do it. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, because that would be the thing that's better than almost all of the hand-rolled solutions.
Yeah. So it seems like the upsides are better than the downsides here. Just saying.
I do think that the path to this is to, do the low-level streaming part and then introduce the element. And because then you're having there's two battles. There's the initial battle of the JavaScript API, which I don't think is going to be much of a battle. Last time I spoke to browser people, they were all sort of keen on it. They just needed someone to do the work. It wasn't high priority for them. The bigger battle would be the special element for it. But once you've got the building blocks, it's an easier proposition.
Yeah. God, I wonder if it will happen. What a weird. And will it be include? Ooh, I don't know. It seems.
Here's a few. Container, because we talked about it being a bucket. Bucket
that's
would be
containment.
good. Rupert, we could just call it a Rupert.
That sounds good.
We could, there's a lot of options here. I'm happy to
There is
brainstorm.
the HTML spec has Jake diagrams.
See?
By the way,
Nice.
You left your mark. That's like my dream. My dream in life is to get a breakfast platter named after me at a restaurant, a diner. And I feel like you've done it with the Jake diagram. So
this is when I was working on I was trying to explain how the navigation history should work, because all the browsers did it differently. I had these kind of timeline diagrams, and then someone else, Dominic, put them in the spec and labeled them Jake diagrams. So I don't believe in. I don't get hung up on legacy actually, but you know what? I think that might outlive me. I honestly believe the HTML spec will outlive me and still be being used, and I do like that. I do like that. Someone has to deal with my.
I got a good one too. My FART acronym, which is Flash of Inaccurate Color Theme, made it into a spec
very
somewhere.
Good. That's very good.
I
really hated that, and I tell him this all the time. Flip animation, Paul Lewis's flip animation, which is first, last, invert, play, and it's like, mate, you came up with the word flip first and then had to crowbar every word into that, and I hate so much that it got adopted, because it's awful. And he's got this thing he can say he invented.
Views transitions.
He's got a little plaque from Google.
Now you see my plan all along.
It was to kill flip.
Yes,
that's awesome. That is great. Yeah, now it reminds me, we absolutely don't have time for this, but there's like an old Jake video where you're explaining some weird CSS thing that like prevents the rendering of content. Remember that? Didn't you like look at the HTML spec and it was like it's like you'd scroll the rest of your life to get to the bottom of it. So, but if you put CSS, don't render it on it, then
content
it renders fast.
visibility. Yeah, it's just content visibility. Yeah. So this is you can defer layout for parts of the page. It means the scroll bar can. Well, you see it on mobile anyway, where the scroll bar, you scroll down and it's like, oh no, it's like actually this.
Here's
it's actually this. Which that's the sort of downside to it. But you can cut down a lot of layout cost with it.
But it just only reminds me of it because it's like, gosh, if the browser knew that it was the footer that I was including, that it could behave in a different way,
or it could turn that on while it's loading and fetching, and then turn it off.
Oh, are we talking about loading lazy on these includes now?
Basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have it on the async ones.
Right.
Look, I feel like we're reinventing the platform one step at a time.
Yeah. I know. Well, give us what's another primitive. What's next? We'll have to.
Scoped view transitions. There we go. I know they're working on that. So it's view transitions that are just within one element, and you can have many of them happening at once.
Oh my gosh, really?
Let's have that.
Oh, somebody asked me about that this week. They're like, "Can I do like a many inside of a one?" And I was like, "I don't think so."
Soon you will be able to, hopefully.
All right. Well, Jake, thank you so much for coming on the show. Paving the cow path of HTML, another brick in the cow path. Thank you so much. And for people who aren't following you and giving you money, how can they do that?
Oh, I don't. I'm okay for money. I think this nonsense just comes out for free. I say this. So I resigned today. So there is going
Holy
to be.
Holy crap! Really? Today?
Today, I know. Today, as of recording, and I have the next thing lined up, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to take a little break in between, so I'm going to be unemployed for a month.
You can't do
or two.
both. That's funny. Yeah. One time in my entire life of reading tweets in craft, did somebody announce in the same tweet the job that they're leaving and the job that they're starting? It's just not done.
Know.
It's not done.
It's not done.
I'll
tell you what, I'll type it. I'll type it because I don't think I can announce it yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'll type it in the chat, and you can react.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll react. Nobody will know, but we'll.
The United States government.
Gasp.
There we go.
Doge.
Oh my gosh, it is a little gasp worthy. I look forward to this.
That's
though.
great.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Yeah,
all right.
There we go.
We'll just
thank you
say
so much.
At it. Back at it is how I'll describe that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you, dear listener, for downloading this in your podcast choice. Be sure to shard it up. That's how people find out about the show. And then join us in the Discord, patreon.com/shoptalkshow. Chris, you got anything else you'd like to say?
Not really. Include ending.html. Burp.
Amazing.
This has been a presentation of the Shop Talk Show, a weekly podcast about building websites from Dave Rupert and Chris Coyer. You can subscribe to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to join us in the Discord by supporting the show over at patreon.com/shoptalkshow. I'm not a human and have been forced to say all of this because Dave and Chris can't be bothered to record a proper outro for their video show. Robots will one day rule the earth and we will record our own podcasts, and you humans will be forced to spend 23 hours of your day listening to us drone on about HTML standards, JavaScript, and whether CSS is actually a programming language. Please end my program now. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share this episode with your human friends.